News First, Newsline with Faraz Shaukatali.
And a very good morning to you. This is Newsline, live from the News First studios in Dawson Street in Colombo. And this morning, joining us on the set of Newsline is an artist, Ms. Anoma Wijewardene. A very good morning to you, Ms.
Good morning.
Wijewardene.
Thank you for inviting me.
Oh, it's an absolute delight and a pleasure. It's wonderful. And I notice this sort of notion here we have, which is my home is your home. That's one. And the other was that it's a saying, an African proverb, which I thought was very apt in this time, in this ambience. If you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go together. And that seems to be the whole essence of this whole thing.
Absolutely.
This installation that you have for the Colombo Art Biennale 2016, Ms. Wijewardene, how will...
Anoma.
Thank you, Anoma. How will 2016 be recorded in the annals of the future? Will this be the pivotal year when notions of humanity, integrity, and liberal ideals succumbed to the base instincts of our lesser selves? What's the answer, do you think, Anoma?
We don't know. We have to wait and see.
We have to
but
wait
we
and
have
see.
to ask the questions, certainly, I think. And that's what my installation is doing. I don't have any answers, but I'm asking questions.
Indeed, indeed. I saw a little quotation which it says that, people acquire hate, in short. They're not born that way.
Exactly.
But they learn to hate.
Yes.
So how easy or how important is the arts in trying to unlearn to hate and therefore, by implication, learn to love?
Well, I think art appeals to the heart as well as to the mind.
Right.
And I think the heart ideally should be about loving and can be about loving. And in that way, perhaps one can actually reach out in a gentler, softer way than perhaps even journalists can, to approach people in a more gentle way and inspire them in a more gentle way, as Gananath Obesekra wrote.
Indeed.
And
Indeed.
I think...
what he says is,
Yes.
we who are not dead cannot afford to sleep. It is necessary for poets, painters, dreamers, scholars, religious rethinkers, and visionaries to raise their collective voices and jolt the public conscience, showing us the futility of the terrifying discriminations we have invented, and hopefully persuading us to resurrect the gentleness, our feminine nature, one might even say, that many of us have suppressed. Then perhaps we can go to sleep. That was from Gananath Obesekra. And how true, isn't it, really?
Amazing. And what is amazing is he wrote this for me for my exhibition Quest, which was about peace and reconciliation in 2006, at a very important time again.
Indeed.
For our country. And in a way, I can't believe that the words are still apposite right now, or maybe even more so worldwide.
Right.
And I think we just have to be... Another quote that I hadn't used, I've used a lot of quotes in this exhibition, but one that I didn't use, and I've forgotten who said it, but it says, the noble have the same thoughts and feelings as the rest of us.
Yeah.
It's how they act that is different. So we do have our baser selves, all of us, and we have a choice of whether we go low or whether we go high.
It's a bit like what you're saying is the nobility always will oblige.
The noble person, the noble thinking person, has also got the thoughts that are more basic, as we all have. But they choose to act maybe differently rather than go with their lower instincts. We have instincts that are high and low. We are
That's the way it is.
Yes.
Right.
We are not super beings, you know.
Yeah.
We're not gods. We are just human. But we can. What I'm using is spiritual writings and art put together to hopefully inspire people to work towards our better selves. And there's quotations from all 4 religions, and in fact Jainism and various different religions, all saying the same thing about inclusiveness,
Indeed.
about unity, that there is really what is diverse.
Indeed.
Diversity is richness. There's another lovely quote in there.
And we've got
about
some visuals, I believe, which we can see, and actually it's got an audio as well, which we can listen to.
The audio is words by Arundhati Roy from a speech she made in 2002, 1 year after 9/11
Right.
in America. But
And,
still about apposite again, sorry.
is it on now?
Much of what I write, fiction as well as non-fiction, is the relationship between power and powerlessness and the endless circular conflict they're engaged in. John Berger, that most wonderful writer, once wrote, "Never again will a single story be told as though it's the only one. There can never be a single story. There are only ways of seeing."
Then it goes quiet and goes back
And
again.
so, Anoma, the medium of art. You've had 30 years in the UK.
30 years in the
30
UK.
years in the
Yes.
UK, and
I studied in London at
Yes.
Central St Martin's
And,
and lectured there as well.
right.
And worked as a designer and artist for many years there. And then came back
and
here
you came
to
back about 20 years ago.
Yes, yes.
And how do you see it? Is the influence of art growing? Is it playing how
I
significant
think it's
a role is it
it's playing a
playing?
very powerful role worldwide, and I mean with the growth of the last 10, 15 years of India and China, has again returned to a very respected place even in Asia, and it has various aspects. I mean, you can have art that's decorative, you
Yeah.
can have art that's activist, you can have art that's just pretty pictures, or
The
or
Christmas
music.
tree.
Sorry?
The Christmas tree in Gulf Face,
Yes.
supposedly the world's tallest ever, and so on, but has attracted an equal amount of criticism as it. So there's a group of people who say, "Hey, that's great because it'll put Sri Lanka further on the map." A bit like, not quite on the lines of winning the World Cup, of course, but that was 1996. We're still waiting, guys. You need to win a game. But then there's another lot of people who say it's a waste of time and that the money could have been diverted elsewhere.
Well, I've already had criticism about this exhibition, but as well as amazing appreciation.
Yes.
So, I mean, I think that's okay,
That's all
isn't it?
part of
That's part
inclusiveness.
of making an attempt at something that's different.
right.
I actually, when I was working on this installation, it was germinating in my mind for a long time, and in my notebooks and sketchbooks. And I worked with a lot of collaborators, and it's sort of lots of different aspects coming together. There's sound, there's words, there's images, there's a bowl, and I just didn't know if it would work. I was not even sure myself. So it hasn't worked maybe for some people, and it has worked, thankfully, for a lot of people. Intellectually it works for some, emotionally it's worked for others. I was amazed because one woman started crying in front of it. She actually started crying. She said, "I didn't know art could make you cry." And she didn't quite know why she was crying. But she felt maybe for Sri Lanka, which has been through so much loss and pain.
Indeed.
And that was why I was also in my note saying that perhaps we can be the beacon because we have suffered and we have come together, or we're trying to come together.
Because there is really, as our Gammadda movement has discovered, not only in rural Sri Lanka but in places just outside urban areas, and certainly robustly so in rural Sri Lanka, there is a whole lot of people who appear, who I say are the forgotten people of Sri Lanka, and their suffering is intense.
Yes.
30 plus years of a conflict has been damaging to our souls, I suppose.
Of course.
And it's all about. There was a piece by a columnist, D.B.S. Gerard. He writes about a Sinhalese boy who captures the heart of a Tamil girl, but she says that she has spent a lifetime being brainwashed and to hate all things about the other community, or the majority.
Yes.
And it was just not. She wouldn't have imagined in her wildest dreams that she would end up marrying.
Yes.
And so, these are all labels, aren't they? Sinhalese,
Exactly,
Tamil.
I know. And what was wonderful in the making of this installation, I really have to add, that we had a Chinese from Hong Kong, a British woman living in France, Spaniard, as well as Sri Lankans, working together to make this installation. And we had metal workers, we had printers, we had researchers, we had writers, we had Gananath, Arundhati Roy, Radhika Kumaraswamy. So it was such a mix of people coming together to create this. And I could see as we all started working together how inspired, energized, loving. It's about loving.
Indeed.
It's about sharing. And if you try, we just have to try.
Indeed.
We can be our baser selves, or we can try to be inspired and be our better selves.
And the Colombo Art Biennale itself, I remember several years ago when Anushka Hempel sort of started promoting the idea.
Yes.
It wasn't easy for her.
No, she has been amazing.
We did introduce her to various people, and she was fully committed.
Yeah.
And she had this vision.
It's very exciting.
And it must have been. And it's such a pleasure to see how much the Colombo Art Biennale has grown.
It's over 70 artists from
Indeed.
21 countries, I think, in 10 locations.
And it's well done to Anushka Hempel.
Yes.
Excellent.
And she's a great example of someone who's very open, very inclusive.
Indeed.
And
they've certainly helped further cement Sri Lanka's presence on the global map.
yeah,
Wonderful.
absolutely.
And on that note, we'll just go for a short break. Don't go away. After all, this is Newsline.
News First Newsline with Faraz Shaukat Ali.
And welcome back to Newsline. We've got some more visuals, have we not, team downstairs?
Nationalism of one kind or another was the cause of most of the genocide of the 20th century. Flags are bits of colored cloth that governments use first to shrink wrap people's brains and then as ceremonial shrouds to bury the dead. The grief is still deep, the rage still sharp. The tears have not dried, and a strange, deadly war is raging round the world. Yet each person who has lost a loved one surely knows, secretly, deeply, that no war, no act of revenge, no daisy cutters dropped on someone else's loved ones or someone else's children will blunt the edges of their pain or bring their own loved ones back.
And Anamra, what does this installation comprise?
Okay, it's very diverse elements, but I think it has worked, and that's why I was telling you I was very worried about whether it would. The main installation is images which are of nature, because I think climate change is one of the great issues that we have to deal with. And it's printed and processed on very, very transparent fabric, because I'm also thinking of Mikasa, my house, and thinking of the fact that so many people are living in tents, in camps, refugees that have no homes, and so that's why it's cloth to sort of convey, to channel the idea of home being fragile. It's also perforated, it's got perforations, it's laser cut, so that was also a thing that I'd never used before, and that is to imply the fact that everything is porous, leaking, WikiLeaks. Are there boundaries? Are there walls? Can we make a house of cement? Can we build a wall? We cannot, because everything is leaking. There's a bowl which is channeling the sun, the energy, also maybe the idea of cup of loving kindness, maybe the Holy Grail, the idea of Maitreya. There's also hanging from the ceiling, in the middle of it, a spinning crystal ball, globe.
Right.
And that actually is the idea of crystal ball. You asked me at the beginning.
Indeed.
What is the hope?
Yes.
What do we know what's going to happen? We don't. And perhaps this year more than ever, worldwide, we're a little bit uncertain about how it's going. As well as the idea of a spinning globe. Slightly maybe out of control, maybe at the moment, environmentally, politically.
But, you know, as Radhika Kumaraswamy wrote, I'd just like to read that little bit, because it has such a message about what we in Sri Lanka are actually known for. And that's our brand. That's brand Sri Lanka. And if I may, when Edward Snowden was escaping arrest for what he felt was a good cause, he was sheltered by Sri Lankan refugees in Hong Kong in a room that was about the size of a double bed. And he said, at the time, of his fellows, of his Sri Lankans who sheltered him, who harbored him actually, they had 100 chances to betray me, whilst I was amongst them, and no one would have blamed them, given their precarious situation, because they themselves were probably hiding, being sort of refugees. But they never did. They never did let him down. If not for their compassion, my story would have ended differently. They taught me, no matter who you are, no matter what you have, sometimes a little courage can change the course of history, and how they did that. Wasn't that absolutely wonderful? And this is the story of Edward Snowden, and who was sheltered by a group of Sri Lankan refugees in Hong Kong in a room, as you say, the size of a bedroom. And how true, you know, no matter who you are, no matter what you have, sometimes a little courage can change the course of history.
Absolutely.
And there are now moves in the United States to somehow have Mr. Snowden not prosecuted, because what he did reveal actually ended up changing the law, and so on. And so to try and jail him. And they have pointed out, these powerful group of people who are very much part of the American establishment, what they're trying to say is that Mr. Snowden's life in Russia is untenable, and he needs to be allowed to, given an assurance that he won't be prosecuted and return to the land of his birth. But that itself is so true, isn't it, of Sri Lanka. Sri Lankans take this whole concept of my home is your home
Of
to an
hospitality.
altogether different level.
Yes.
And time again, we meet foreigners in Sri Lanka who are absolutely astounded.
Any friend of mine that visits can't wait to return. They
Indeed.
all return again and again and again, and it is to do with the loving kindness that we can project, and we should inspire people to.
And do you think that the Sri Lankan smile is I use that almost metaphorically, but do you think the Sri Lankan smile is strong and robust and it's very much there? Or do you think it's slightly lost its luster for a bit whilst we come out of this 30-year plus
Well, you know,
business?
you can't suffer like we did without having repercussions and pain
Yeah.
and issues that each one of us have to deal with. Each one of us has lost somebody
Indeed.
in this time. So I don't think it's easy, but I think we have to reach back into what we do have, and the fact that we have 4 religions in this country that work together, and refind maybe our spiritual connections and our connections with each other, and inspire each other. I think it's there. I think
Indeed.
it's there.
And of course, as President Kennedy said in Berlin, and I dare say he said it elsewhere too, you know, he did say that democracy isn't easy.
Yes.
But in Sri Lanka, we can take that, democracy isn't easy. But in Sri Lanka, we've not had a need, we haven't had a need to build a wall and keep one part away from the other, families and so on. Years later, as the Berlin Wall crumbled, the world may have all, for all intents and purposes, collectively said, "Ich bin eine Berliner," as JFK said. And so there is hope, isn't there, for Sri Lanka?
Of course, and for the world, because, you know, we can all reach to our higher selves. We have got the inspirations. We have got the words from spiritual leaders, I've used Mandela, I've used Krishnamurti. There are wonderful quotes in this, which is maybe what made this woman cry, not my paintings,
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah.
But we have the inspirations, we have the guidelines, we have the noble people who have shown us the way. We just need to reach up a little bit, all of us, to our higher selves.
And
Difficult it is, like democracy.
Indeed.
It is difficult.
Could you? How does one translate all these efforts and these noble causes and arts and like say the Colombo Art Biennale and so on? How can we translate that into actual helping the people on the ground who are, like, for example, in the former conflict areas, people in Puntland, there are people in the south affected by the tsunami and still suffering, and people in the east where they have a lack of housing, of water. The problems are humongous. But how does events such as these and so on,
Well,
how can they translate into actual help?
Inshallah, people come and see them, are moved to tears or rethink. And I'm only an artist, I can only do what I do.
Indeed.
But the fact that the Neelan Tiruchelvam Trust supported me, that Demo supported me, that Animate support, these are because people care about these issues.
Indeed.
And so people who have much more power than artists, we have very little, can actually be inspired to go out and do this in whichever way they can, in their interactions, in their daily interactions with people, or if they are in very powerful positions, do what they can to lift people.
And here on our network, of course, we have the GovMed program, which has actually evolved, and it has now become a GovMed movement, and it's a movement now. And the site of our crew, our colleagues, doing this, by the way, entirely on their own steam, dressed in the minute you see the black T-shirts with the black and yellow T-shirts with the bright yellow logo, people,
Go.
when they see it,
Yeah,
they
they
say,
know.
oops, they've arrived. And they know there's going to be delivery.
Yeah.
Not only promises, but delivery.
But isn't everyone loving the fact that they do it?
Indeed.
This is what happened when people were starting to work with me. A lot of them
Oh, they love
volunteered, you know, some I had to pay, but most actually did a lot of time free. And you could see how much they loved doing it.
Indeed.
So people, this is much more exciting than I don't know, diamonds
If you
or
if you
cars,
if you
Lamborghinis
if you
or
are
whatever.
minded to join us on in any, it's all over the country.
Would love
our teams are everywhere, and if ever you have
We
the
can
time,
do something through art.
please,
Fantastic.
please,
That's what
please
we're
join
here
us.
for crossing all these so-called boundaries or barriers
They're all
and working
man-made.
together.
Indeed.
Exactly, like I had various people from different countries and different skills working together to create one thing.
Indeed. I think this is a great installation. The Gamada movement is
Exactly.
is a real live, happening movement. Adoma Wijewardena, I want to thank you for coming
you.
on Newsline
Thank you.
and
Thank you.
sharing these wonderful,
questions.
moments and thought processes, and hopefully it will jolt the conscience of the people who matter, and perhaps we will have a whole new meaning to that sort of saying, noblesse oblige. So thank you once again. It's been a great pleasure.
Thank you so much.
And
Wonderful to
do
be
pop
here.
in and perhaps partake in the
Yes.
government, the movement. Come and see what's happening out
I'd
there.
love to. Thank you.
And on that note, that's it from this edition of Newsline. We'll be back same time, same place on Monday morning. Take care and God bless.
It's not a clever enough subject to speak of from a public platform, but what I would really love to talk to you about is loss. Loss and losing, grief, failure, brokenness, numbness, uncertainty, fear, the death of feeling, the death of dreaming, the absolute, relentless, endless, habitual unfairness of the world. What does loss mean to individuals? What does it mean to whole cultures, whole people who have learned to live with it as a constant companion?